After a brief break, we are back with our 6 lines series. Today we're talking about the sphere of EQ, which is your emotional model, your ideology of the world. And it's developed from when you're 7 to 14 years old. And this is a pattern that showed up when you felt emotionally overwhelmed and you didn't know what to do. And so your body built this defense pattern using your emotions, typically to shut things down or to project blame outwards or to create space in a situation. And the sphere of EQ is one side of the pathway of intelligence, the other side being the sphere of IQ. And in order to fully embody the gift in city frequencies, we need to balance our EQ, our emotional response, and our IQ, our mental response to any given situation. And that pathway is the same or analogous to the pathway of challenge that we see between life's work sphere and evolution. So there's a lot of energy being held back that can be unleashed when we learn how to deal with situations from a higher frequency. The emotional wound, so this sphere takes full focus and presence and surrender, because emotions tend to take us over. And so we really need to get good at creating some separation from what's happening inside of our bodies and not losing control and not beating ourselves up when we do lose control, because that is all part of the learning. Getting this sphere of IQ to something that we can use for the good takes time and it takes iteration. So the question you have to ask yourself in any exchange is, are your emotions doing something to protect yourself? Or are you staying in innocence? Is this a dance? Is this fun? Is this, even in the most charged situation, something that you can see as part of a storyline? And at the shadow frequency, you don't see things that way. You see things like you're a victim. You see things like circumstances are out of your control, and this emotion that is pouring through you, you have no ability or no control over, and it's just part of the situation because that's what was given to you. And that is the shadow consciousness, the victim consciousness. At the gift, though, you're able to stay aware of the feelings of others. You're able to drop your defenses while still retaining clear boundaries. The EQ is your ideology that informs your psychology, which comes later, right? We develop our psychology from 14 to 21, which is what the sphere of IQ represents. However, what we need to learn is that we're emotionally separate from others at one level, and at another, we're intimately connected in the same. But when we recognize that there is an ability for me to engage with you and to feel with what you're feeling, and at the same time stay present and know what feeling is mine and what is yours, that's when the EQ really starts to come online. So let's get into it. Line 1 is self-esteem at a higher frequency or self-sabotage at a lower frequency. And self-esteem is really the foundation of the emotional wound. In the first 7 years, we decide how we see ourselves through external circumstances, through our parents, through teachers, through peers. And that then carries into the rest of our development. And it's vitally important that we reconnect to our purity, to our source, to the knowing that we are whole in another world, in another paradigm. And first lines turn in always. And so if the self-esteem is there, that's great. You turn in, you check in with it, and then you're able to reflect that onto another person or situation that you're engaging in. However, oftentimes this world is in fact designed to help our awareness get further down the path. And that means some suffering, and that means some circumstances that are probably going to leave a mark on our self-esteem. And it becomes very easy to turn into self-sabotage, which is just this self-undermining pattern. we've got to look inward. We've got to look at what's coming up and recognize that it's ours. And one way that could be helpful here is to look at the repressive and reactive shadow component of your gene key. So if you go to the Gene Keys book, there's always a repressive and a reactive expression of each given key. And if you look at those, you'll see how this self-sabotage happens when emotional conflict arises. And as a first line, you're probably going to be dug in, you're going to be stubborn, and you're going to be stuck in a pattern, even though you can see clearly that that pattern is bringing more suffering to yourself and to other people. It doesn't matter, because it's a self-esteem issue, because it's coming from inside and you haven't yet shined your awareness on it to transform it, you're going to keep doing that thing over and over again. And so what you need to do is contemplate your feelings at a deep level and define the root of them, because oftentimes what you're feeling isn't actually the root feeling, right? Anger oftentimes is beneath that is fear. And digging to that root always is going to allow this aha moment to happen. So as we shine our awareness on a given moment and give it, or on a given emotion, and give it time and give it space, and honestly, you're probably going to have to shine more awareness than you're comfortable with, because we dig into the self, we dig into realizing and recognizing that you have been sabotaging yourself all along, and that is very uncomfortable. It's so much easier to blame somebody else in the world. However, you'll have this aha moment that, holy crap, I'm the one sabotaging my joy. And the healthy first line is high self-esteem with a dose of humility. And self-esteem is what gives you influence. And I don't mean influence over other people. I mean influence in your relationship with how you see the world. Moving on to the second line now, we've got courtesy at a higher frequency, or aggression at a lower frequency. And line 2's nature is to project. So this is a tough one for a second line. Second lines, remember, are like flowy and they tend to just let things come out. They're very passionate in what they're doing. And part of that oftentimes is denial, right? They're this flowy being, so it can't be them. It's got to be the other person. However, what you have to do as a second line is, and Richard Rudd talks about this in the book that accompanies the Venus sequence, leaving your feelings on the porch. And all that means is, we're often told that we need to share everything. And if you keep it inside, you're going to repress it and it's going to eat away at you. And that's just not the truth. You do need to pay attention to them. You do need to transmute them, but there's lots of ways to do that beyond just spewing it out at the other person across from you, which potentially is going to make the situation even worse. You are a natural conduit for powerful emotions as a second line. An emotion like anger, for example, and anger plus blame is aggression. And there's a way to have clean anger. So I'm not saying that it's not okay to be angry. Of course it's okay to be angry, but there's a difference between being angry and being angry at somebody else. As a second line, you attack as a form of defense, right? It's like you go on the offense and that is your defense. And aggression doesn't have to be this big crazy thing. It doesn't have to be a fist fight. It can literally be the way that you say things. It can be your tone, and somebody else is going to perceive that tone as an attack. So it's something that you need to be mindful of as a second line. And courtesy, it's important to know, is not restraint. It's not politeness. It is a passion mixed with consideration. So we're always thinking about what the other person is feeling. And again, that doesn't mean you have to change who you are or change what you do, but it does mean that you are aware of the situation, aware of the variables, aware of where the other person is, and it helps you decide what tone and what frequency and what words to use to get across who you really are. And anger also can be released creatively, so don't forget that. Sometimes it's better to go within and to make something for the world, and oftentimes that you'll feel that charge go away. I'm part of, or was part of, this group, and we had this activity that we did called clearings, which was about moving energy, whatever charge that you had, so that you could be present in the moment. And it is a great activity. I'm sure if you Google it, you can probably find it. It's called a clearing. I'll save it for another video. Twos are free self-expressors, and because of that, you really have got to build up your awareness. Moving on now to the third line, we've got sympathy and apathy, and this is my line here in the sphere of EQ. And in IQ, the keynote for the sixth line that I have there is the absent mind, and here you see it's apathy. And it's interesting, this is just a side note, to think about how the spheres connect to one another. So two totally different spheres, two totally different lines. And one of them, my brain goes absent. The other, my emotions, essentially go absent, right? That's what apathy is. It's this disconnection. So in your profile, think about this, how the spheres interact, how the lines interact. That's a fun exercise to do. People want to turn to you as a third line when they are in pain. You are somebody that is going to feel open to them, somebody that is going to have lots of experiences that can help guide people and help talk to people. However, at a low frequency, you're going to come across as untrustworthy. People are not going to believe what you're saying, and that's because of this apathy. And what that is you're suppressing the emotions that make you feel vulnerable. So at some point from 7 to 14, something happened, whether it was with your peers at school or with your parents, where you were being yourself and sharing something and it got kicked back on you. And in that moment, you decided, I can't do this anymore. I can't share who I am, especially when I'm hurting inside. And so you shut off from these intense feelings. And that internal shutting off from intense feelings so that you don't have to feel them, so that you don't have to feel that hurt again, makes other people feel the same thing. It creates this inability to feel what other people are feeling and an inability for other people to feel you. And because of that, there's this distrust that happens. And a keynote of this is you have great intellectual control in a situation and great emotional dysregulation. It's like there's a disconnect between what's happening in your brain and what's happening in your heart or in your belly. And that is a tough place to be. And it's a tough wound to heal, to reconnect those two things. But what you need to do is contemplate, how do you deflect your intense emotions? Because if you can find how you deflect, you can start to lower that deflection defense, and you can start to allow those intense emotions to come through in really safe settings at first, someone that you really trust, and then eventually it can open wider and wider so that you can do it at work, or you can do it with a perfect and total stranger. And I'm certainly not there, and it takes a lot of time, energy, and effort. So part of that, because you're so intellectually driven, is that you're really good at faking or feigning emotions. But those are only on the surface. There might even be tears, there might be like this big show, but you never feel them all the way. And so you get stuck in this loop because they keep coming back, because you're not feeling them all the way. You're not doing something creative with them. You're not expressing them in any way, shape, or form. And so they loop back around again. And so you have to break out of this self-obsession. And what I mean by self-obsession is fear around how other people are seeing you. Ultimately, that's why the vulnerability is not there. You're trying to control what other people are thinking and feeling about you. And we've got to break that self-obsession. We've got to stop worrying so much about how we are being perceived. You've got to learn to be vulnerable, but not overindulgent to your feelings, because that's the other side of this, is you can get lost in your feelings and you can let them control your life. Remember, your emotions are something that are passing through you. It's like clouds when you're outside. They're just rolling on by. You're that blue sky. And so we need to see them, we need to honor them, and we need to let them go. Sympathy is allowing true emotion, your true emotion, to come through, while also responding to the emotions and the needs of other people. And at the same time, it's not losing your sense of self in the process. All right, moving on now, we're on line 4. We've got kindness and meanness. And meanness is just an externalization of low self-esteem. So remember, lines 1 and 4, 2 and 5, 3 and 6 resonate with one another. And so you're going to notice some carryover between these things. This is more in the personal realm. This is more in the collective realm, and that's very broad. But there's definitely a resonance between the two. So when your self-esteem isn't there, you cast that out on other people. And it's just a means of pushing somebody away before they have a chance to reject us. So because your self-esteem isn't there, we're mean first so that they don't have a chance to not like who we are. You, as a 4th line, though, have this natural social gift. It's who you are. Remember, this is keynoted community, lots of places. However, at the shadow, you use that gift almost in a political way, in a manipulative way, in a way to say one thing and get what you want and do another thing, because that's what's really and truly driving you and important to you. So an example of this is like talking behind somebody's back. You say one thing to their face and then you go behind them and you say a totally different thing. That is being mean. It's rejection. It's feeling rejected and noticing when you feel rejected and paying attention to what tactics, what do you do when you feel that sense of rejection? That's the key question for a 4th line, because identifying that behavior in the moment is what's going to start to transform that meanness into kindness. It's going to help you see the hurt in the other person and their boost of self-esteem. We've got a big wasp. Oh, he's friends. We're going to pretend he's a friend because I have self-esteem. He knows things are fine. So at a higher frequency, you're going to feel good and you're going to share that feeling with other people. It's about projecting, just like you're like trying to be, you're externalizing low self-esteem. Well, you can also externalize high self-esteem. You can see the core of somebody, their quintessence, and you can decide to focus on that thing and share that with them instead of this meanness. And kindness isn't about getting anything back in return. In fact, it oftentimes is hidden. For example, not saying something is an example of kindness, and the other person would never know that there was something that popped into your brain that you could have said that was mean to them, or that would have changed the situation to lower the frequency. But you didn't. You chose not to speak, and that oftentimes is as powerful as speaking, but it's hidden. It's this hidden kindness. So make sure that you're not always needing to be outward in what you're doing. The gift and the city of your gene key here, think about those as something that you can offer in relationship, that you can offer to another person to help them, to hold that in their heart so that you believe that they are also being kind to you. Moving on now to the fifth line, we've got respect and disrespect. So fives carry a massive potential to be respected, and that's what makes them very strong leaders. However, respect is coming from an emotional sense, like an emotional security that other people can feel in you. And that's what generates or fosters that respect. So if you don't have that emotional security, if you don't have that self-esteem, remember everything always comes back to the first line, then you're going to be disrespectful to other people. You're going to be disrespectful to your body. You're going to be disrespectful to your health. You're going to be disrespectful even to like feeling in general, just emotions in general. Or you're going to project that feeling of disrespect onto the environment, onto culture, onto specific people. So like this is disrespecting the earth and consuming more than you need to consume. This is disrespecting culture at large because you believe they've got it wrong, even though you're a part of that same culture, or it's disrespecting specific people that you don't agree with. And disrespect is just impatience, selfishness, and cynicism. Those are the three things that drive disrespect: impatience, selfishness, and cynicism. And because you have this feeling of disrespect, you abuse your power in the shadow frequency as a fifth line. Because you don't respect things, the only thing you respect is you, and so you pursue your personal agenda at the cost of everything else in the world. And that will to power is driven by an emotional insecurity. You don't feel whole. And so you go out there and you try and take to try and fill that void. And it's not just fifth lines that do that, it's all of us, but especially fifth lines have to be aware. And oftentimes for a fifth line, it's going to manifest as a power struggle. You're trying to feel more powerful. You're trying to grab power because you have this emotional insecurity. You feel powerless, and so you'll do anything you need to try and feel powerful. What you often need, unfortunately, as a fifth line is a deep humbling. Something needs to happen. It happened to me, and it ended me up in bankruptcy and divorce. Because the universe recognizes that you're probably not going to see this thing yourself. And so something external needs to happen. It's this powerful event to jolt you awake from this striving or search for power and transitioning to the striving and search for love. What you're really after isn't external power given to you by the world, it's internal power. And when you add that with confidence and humility, that is respect. So you've got to start first with self-respect. And once you have self-respect, then you'll respect others. Then you'll respect the world. And then you'll act how you're meant to act as a fifth line. And that's why people will come to you as a leader. And then finally, we finished with the sixth line. We've got reverence and alienation. And reverence is just respect without the power component. Six lines could care less about gaining power because they have this separation from this world, right? They tend to be more vision holders, a little more, these were our ecstatics, these were our monks. And so there's this degree of separation, and so they don't need the power or the respect that the fifth lines crave. However, because of that, they're not inherently a leader a lot of the times. They don't have this same magnetism that fifth lines have. For a sixth line, it's all about the journey. It's a journey of emotional discovery, a journey to find wisdom. And wisdom comes from trials. We've got to remind ourselves of that. Day in and day out, we get angry when things don't go like we want them to go. We get frustrated, we get upset. But those exact things are the things that get us closer to reunion, to remembering who we are and what really matters. And if you're a sixth line, you're always going to have this vision, and that vision is going to hold always through those trials. That said, you might not feel it, might not be conscious. You might lose the vision externally, but internally in your cells, in your deepest knowing, that thing is always going to be there. It's always going to be waiting. So you need patience. You've got to find a new understanding, a new paradigm for emotion, and it's your job to bring that back to the world. Richard Rudd in his more prophetic Gene Keys, 55, talks about this new awareness from the belly. And it's that awareness from the belly, that emotional operating system from down here, from your Dantian or your Hara, that is the direction that all of humanity is heading. And you as a sixth line are the vision holder. You're who's here to bring that to the collective. And it takes patience, it takes time. And that oftentimes leads to alienation. It leads to this separate feeling. You feel separate from the world, you feel separate from other people. You don't understand how things are as they are. How can other people not see what you can see? It's so obvious to you, but they can't. And so we need to be patient. We need reverence, right? We need this long-term seeing and this compassion for other people, to meet them where they are instead of wishing they were like you. It's putting yourself in their place and seeing them where they are, as they are. If you had enough awareness, if you had enough love, you wouldn't need to change them. You wouldn't want to change them. That's God's work. You just have to be there, and you have to show up, and you have to be yourself, and you have to have an open heart. Oftentimes, the sixth line journey can feel like being in a tunnel, where you're driving through the dark, and then all of a sudden the tunnel ends and you're out in the light and your vision is becoming a reality. And then we go back into the next mountain, into another tunnel, and it all gets sucked away from you again. And then you come back out into the light and back into a tunnel, and it can be exhausting. And that's why we need this patience. You need to show your strength. You need an open heart. You need to see the beauty in the world, even when we go through the struggle. The more or further I go down this path, the more I can see the paradox in everything. Just this necessity to hold both sides, always. There's waves. Energy moves in waves. All right, that's it for the six lines. I'm in my new place. I don't love this setup that we have here. The light's really sharp. I know I'm sweating my butt off. We got a bee issue. So I'll keep experimenting with new backgrounds. That's also why I haven't put anything up for a couple of weeks. I had 2 weddings, a move, and I got sick. So I wanted to continue through, but alas, here we are, finishing up EQ. I think we only have a couple more spheres to go for the Venus sequence, and then that will conclude all of our 6 lines. If you have anything specific that you want me to go to after that, I'd love you to leave it in the comments. Trying to figure out what I want to do. I still really don't know. I don't know. I don't think I want to coach. I might want to teach. If there's any way that I could serve you, let me know so that I can try and figure out what direction I'm going here. I'm blessed and fortunate enough to have some time right now. And at the same time, this classic paradox, I'm frustrated because a year ago I had all the money in the world and I couldn't figure out how to stabilize. And now I have all the time in the world and I can't figure out how to stabilize and who to serve and what to do. And so I'm kind of feeling like a meandering lost soul at the moment, just waiting for something. And maybe that's something as you, all right guys, thanks for watching. See you next time.